And welcome into the League of Extraordinary GMs podcast. I'm your host, Warren Jordan, along with my esteemed co-host, Chatham Arkin. And today we have a very special guest, the Moneyball alternative to the NFL echo chamber, a legend in his own time, the greatest player evaluator in the world, R.C. Fischer. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you for that welcome. We can just stop the show now. I can only ruin it from here.
What's going, Joey Chestnut, Nathan's hot dog eating competition intro?
I appreciate that, but seriously, it's appreciative to be on. Thank you for the invitation. You can give the background of how this came together if you'd like, but I appreciate you having me on, and I'm ready to take all of the arrows and darts that you're ready to throw.
Chatham, why don't you introduce how this all came together?
Well, Warren basically midsummer starts peppering me with, have you been paying attention to fantasy football at all? And so I start listening to podcasts, and I'll be like, dude, these guys they're fun. Whoever I listen to, it doesn't matter. And then he'll be like, no, I have some specific ones. So he had me listen to one of yours from, it was the rookie hype one. Was that early August or?
I think there was a May and a July with Matt.
Right.
Yeah,
and so
pre-draft and then late July.
Yeah, I think it was the late July one. And you made a couple takes, and it was right. I listened to it right before we started this Superflex Dynasty, and I'm like, I am just lost. And then I actually did a redraft, and we had a podcast last week. We just do a little thing for our buddies, and I was going after some of your takes, and Warren's like, well, take it as it comes. And I was like, no, but he does this for a living, so now he's in my head. So when I'm at that turn, it's like, I'm going to take this guy. I was like, nope. RC would just yell at me. And now he's in my head. I don't even know this guy. So anyway, he emailed you. For some reason, you emailed back, and here we are.
Now I'm going to yell at you in person. Now I'm not just going to live in your head. I'm going to be right in your face.
Camped out in there.
Well, we've got a great show for you all today as we bathe in RC's glory of golden fantasy greatness.
Nope.
No. How about as we take in RC's fire hose of information?
That's way bad.
No, that's not that one either. All right. How about we just drop that second bumper and move on? All right, before we get into the meat of the show, we have a league-specific question. It's a age-old debate in our 13-year-old fantasy football league. About 6 or 7 years ago, we decided to dump the tight end position and change it to a wide receiver tight end flex position because we felt the pool of possible winning teams, and this was before we started Dynasty, this was redraft days, but we felt the pool of possible championship teams was just too narrow. And so that's why we made the switch. And so this isn't really related to the main content of the show, but it's a debate we've been having for years. And we just wanted to know what you think and which do you prefer and why.
When you say it was too narrow, are you trying to open it up to make it easier?
Yeah, in our league, not everybody's quite the same skill level, and we found that if you didn't have like one or three tight ends, you didn't have a chance in our 10-team league. And so by switching that, we felt like it created more open competition, and then we'd have 6 or 7 teams competing.
To accomplish the goal of making it easier, it makes sense. Me personally, I don't like it because I like that delineation. I like the competition and the challenge to, if you don't, especially in Dynasty, you don't have a tight end, then that makes your Dynasty rookie draft board change a little bit, change your thoughts on a Brock Bowers, or down the line in the 3rd and 4th and 5th rounds, what flyer play you might be taking a Cade Stover earlier than most people would recommend. So I like that it has more twists and turns to it for sure. But if you're trying to make it,
that's quick.
We lost him. He's like, I'm not taking these kinds of questions. I'm out.
This is just to talk about his roster.
Welcome back.
I guess they didn't like that answer.
We said the same. We were like, he thought that was a stupid question. He's out.
But to bring up the bottom group, I would maybe raise the fees, do something to kick them in the pants to get them up to speed. But if you can't do that and you want to make it wide open, you certainly accomplished it.
Try harder.
Yeah. Warren has a fault that is only a fault because he loses money, but he's a way too nice of a commissioner. If he wanted to, he would win every year, or he'd at least be in the top 2 every year. And I think in the how many years we've been doing this, you've won it once, twice?
13, one time.
Yeah, which is dumb. He should win every year. All right, we'll hit you with why we brought you on here. So you have some pretty famous takes that are big, like not little big. I mean, obviously the White over Bijan, although the situation, it seemed like in listening to that take from a year ago, it really didn't seem absurd. I mean, your disdain for the Falcons' offensive decisions is why it's just accepted. But when we get to guys like Trevor Lawrence or Bryce Young or Caleb Williams, guys who have never not been successful, and
in college.
Well, but I mean, even high school, right? So like I live in Southern California. And Bryce Young was, I mean, he was everything down here. And they hit even like the appropriate metrics. It seems like there's we have a buddy in the league who said it's the Clint Eastwood trouble with the curve, where you can hear the thump. What is it that you hear that the rest of the industry doesn't? Well, like Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, you called that a while ago, and who we haven't seen it yet, but.
But we could go back to like a Bryce Young or even a Trevor Lawrence, because Trevor Lawrence was a given, and he had some success. He's had some success, more than I thought that he has, but he's not lived up to his billing. And Bryce Young is going to be a big time bust. Why I think I can hear that thud is I legitimately watch all of these NFL games live and then back again on tape during the midst of the season. So I'm taking a lot of tape to compare and contrast when I see certain players, certain things happening. And I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at defenders. I'm looking at the offensive line. I'm trying to look at everything. In the off season, then I'm watching specific tape on the highest ranked players, the bigger name players at first, and then working my way down the list. But all off season, I'm not playing fantasy baseball. I'm not playing fantasy basketball. I'm not going on vacation. I'm not doing anything but having a normal work day that I would in season. I am just devouring tape. And I think I have such a library of players and tape in my head that it's getting to where I can just give me 5 minutes and I'm probably going to throw that dart close to the bullseye. But if you give me more than that time, I'll probably get it figured out. not perfect, but I put in for the last 10 plus years, I have put in the tape work, which I didn't intend to. I started out, I worked a corporate job in finance and operations, and I always loved fantasy sports. I stayed away from it when I got married because I knew it would take my life away. So when I had young kids, I just put my energies into doing what I would normally do for sports. I put it towards work, and I was a big baseball guy growing up. When I heard about Moneyball and I read the book Moneyball, that to me it was like finding religion. Like I was so into that book and concept and everything. I took those principles of Moneyball and tried to apply them to my workplace, to my job. I didn't put it towards sports. I put it towards my job and then amateur stock market, stock trading. So then as my kids started to get a little bit older, potty trained, all that type of stuff, I got invited to play in a fantasy football league, and it had been a long time since I had played, and I was like, I shouldn't do this. Like, somebody who had a prior heroin addiction that they had kicked. Like I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't take that needle out and shouldn't wrap this rubber around my arm. But okay, it's just a neighborhood league.
Familiar sting.
It was just a little local neighborhood thing. They needed an extra player, so I'm like, yeah, what the heck? But I can't do what the heck. I instantly started trying to find an angle somehow, some way in short order, so that I wasn't drafting blind. I don't trust mainstream anything, so I wasn't just going to get a magazine and run with it. So I spent a week trying to develop a Moneyball type system on the fly, similar to the Moneyball system I had developed to draft my kids' T-ball team when they were 5, 6, 7, and 8, and got the coach's pitch, and we got to draft. There was an actual draft of these kids for the league. So that's just how I roll. So once I started getting back into fantasy football, I was like, I'm all in. I'm not doing this half speed. So one thing led to another. To I'm like, boy, I really enjoyed putting these numbers together and trying to think of. It started blowing off the rust of my brain about sports and trying to get an edge and all of that. So I started to take it a little bit more serious, and I don't know why I just kept running with it. It was almost like a weird calling that made me really start to dig in. And my thought was, I knew Moneyball, I knew it in baseball. Like, where is it for football? Why isn't this more prevalent in football? So that's where it kind of started. And I'm like, I'm gonna build a mousetrap. I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm sure there's smarter people out there building the Moneyball for football, or it exists and we just don't know about it. So I'm not, some random guy in his basement isn't going to be the one that comes up with something that other people aren't working hard on. So I started from there, started coming up with statistical analysis. And I was too busy with life to watch all the games, watch the tape, all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, this is going to be my cheat sheet. This is going to be my shortcut. Then I shared that with some people at my real work, and they were all of a sudden, everybody was fascinated with wanting to talk about my fantasy football statistical models that I was messing with. It's like, I can't get them interested in our regular workplace work.
Right.
But you start talking about fantasy football, and I had an audience like I was Christ on the mountainside. So I'm like, there's something to this. there's got to be a business angle to this. There's got to be something to serve in this growing, 15 years ago in this growing business. It seems is like there's an appetite for this. So I started out as the metrics guy, as the statistical guy, as the Moneyball guy, but after a couple of years, I learned, hey, wait a minute, some of this stuff is way off. Like, how did these numbers fail me so hard on certain players? I'm like, I need to go look at these players. So thank goodness we're in the era of everything starting to get easily on tape and YouTube and everything else. So then I started realizing, hey, there's a whole other side to this. I need to watch these guys and confirm what I'm seeing in the numbers, or see if there's some type of reason why they're faking my numbers. So then it became the half metrics, half scouting guy. But now I spend most of, I'd say 75% tape scouting, 25% my own numbers and algorithms that help point me in the direction of what I think I need to look at. And that's my existence.
Yeah, there's a lot there, but building on the last thing you were saying there's so much noise in the numbers outputs that we get, the actual end of year statistics or even points per game statistics. There's so much even randomness in a football game that you get watching it, you understand where that randomness is messing with what you thought would happen.
And to speak to your point on that, I would bring it home by saying, it's like I look at Pro Football Focus, and I don't know how the hell or why the hell they're grading things the way that they grade them. So everybody can have statistical models. Everybody can have fancy average depth of target and whatever run game efficiency, whatever they want to fall in love with from one year to the next. But there's so many variables in that, and none of them seem to take into account the quality of the opponent.
Sure.
There's a big difference. Like in the preseason, there's a big difference when you're watching a first team offense operate against the other team's guys who are going to be cut this week versus, or if they're playing the other team's first team defense. It's a big difference. So, and that just goes right up to
CeeDee Lamb being vaulted to the number one wide receiver, the number one overall dynasty asset in single QB after riding a 10-game stretch of cakewalk. Like, are we sure?
Yeah, and there's the other part of it. If you want to talk about whether we talk about Marvin Harrison, Caleb Williams, CeeDee Lamb, whoever, there's the football argument. I could tell you how much I do or don't like the player in general. But then there's a whole fantasy aspect where I know a great example would be, for me, is Najee Harris. I can't stand him. I think he's a terrible running back.
Right.
Yep.
In a lot of worlds, if he'd have gone to Ole Miss, he'd be benched already.
Right.
But everyone's so convinced that he's a great running back, that he's going to get all these touches, and he could potentially be an RB1 any given year because he's going to get all of the opportunity.
Right.
So I can say that guy sucks, but then you look at his numbers and go, well, wait a minute, he's an RB1. He's a strong RB2. Like you don't know what you're talking about. Like that could happen with Marvin Harrison. When we talk about Marvin Harrison,
right,
there's the player, but then there's the opportunity that he's going to be afforded that everybody else is not. So is he going to be a success in fantasy, but is he going to be a bust more in reality versus his hype?
Yeah, we could skip to that one. I mean, if we want, so if we go straight to that one, like looking at your dynasty rookie rankings, actually surprised me after listening. You still have him 1, but then you go over to the analysis and it's like, well, he's not as good as, these 3 players, Dunze, Neighbors, or I don't know, McConkey. Like he's not as, you don't have him as good, but he's one of 2 targets, maybe Michael Wilson, hopefully. And so you say, he still should be the 101 draft, or maybe not the 101, but he should still be the first wide receiver drafted in a dynasty so that you then sell him.
Yes. Yeah. And I always, my background and just the way that I approach it is all of these players are essentially stocks.
Right.
I don't have a favorite team. I don't have any loyalty. The only loyalty I have to them is if they're on my fantasy team, or if I've bet on them prop betting wise, then I have an interest, but it's only transactional. It's only of that moment. Uh, Outside of that, I have no emotion. I need to get the scouting right, whether I get it right first, or if I quickly see that I'm wrong on something and I get religion on it and then jump on board with it. I cannot hold on to a bad position. But I look at them all as stocks, and when I look at it, Marvin Harrison, the hype on him, the ADPs, the just what the analysts say about him, they treat him like he's a messiah.
Right.
And he can't possibly live up to this. I mean, this is one of the easiest calls in my career. That if you have a dynasty rookie draft number 1 pick, you should take Marvin Harrison and trade him before he plays a game, or trade just trade the pick, knowing that it's, they're coming after Harrison, because what you're going to get back in return should be great. And if Marvin Harrison ends up great for fantasy, you didn't really lose anything, because you got something great in exchange for him, because his price is so through the roof.
Right.
But if I'm right that he can't live up to the 101, that he's not one of the 3 to 5 best wide receivers in this class from a football standpoint, then that trade is going to look genius. We had guys, that subscribers trading the 101 for Justin Jefferson in the offseason, for Jamar Chase, for
us.
Yeah. So when you're getting that exchange, I'm looking at it like, I want to I see risk with Marvin Harrison, so I can easily take that risk out. The most ROI you might ever get on Marvin Harrison in fantasy is in a dynasty rookie draft, and drafting him and or trading his pick and getting the other things that you want. And I see people just getting ridiculous hauls, ridiculously good hauls in return, and never having to see if that Harrison's going to turn out to be great or not. And I really don't think, from all that I've watched, and I've spent more time on his tape than any single player in this draft, because it's like with Bijan Robinson last year. When I see something that's so opposite of everybody else, I mean, like 99.999% on one side, and then me all alone on the other, saying this thing, I start to question myself. I'm like, what if I've lost it? What if I've made a huge mistake? I'm going to look like a fool. When I go out and when I say this, people are going to, if it's wrong, the whole business is going to go down the tubes. Like,
right.
I'm past all that now. I was more like that 10 years ago, 7 years ago. But I've won more of these bets, quote unquote, than I've lost by a high margin. So I don't have any problem freely taking these stances against, usually when it's 99.99% against me on the other side, I usually win that every time. So when something lines up that way, I oddly feel good, because that seems to be the winning position to be on. If
that in itself is affirmation.
Yeah, if I'm part of the 99, I start to get a little worried.
Yeah, and that's what I really have loved, what you've brought to the table. Finding you mainly through the Mind of Mansion with Matt Kelly, and then eventually subscribing to your content, was how you're able to keep your process and your thoughts isolated from the groupthink. And not let everyone else question your belief, and you stick to it. And having you on the Mind of Mansion before the rookie draft this year was pivotal for us. And before that episode, we were locked in on Caleb Williams. So that's the only thing we heard. That's the only thing we knew. We don't grind tape. We're fairly casual, but pretty serious about this. And then as soon as we listened to you break it down, it was, we got to move off of this. And then picking the right time, because knowing everybody else in that Patreon League for Player Profilers also listening to you say the same thing, picking the right time, and we waited.
Don't believe it.
We waited until the draft started on the clock, and then that's when people get hungry. And we traded that 101. It ended up being Cody Carpentier gave us the Jamar Chase, a second-round pick, a couple late-round picks, and then he didn't even take Caleb Williams. So he was in agreement with you, but he did take Marvin Harrison Jr. in that spot. So we'll see what he does with them. Not to harsh on Cody. We love Cody as well, and are big supporters of what he and Maddie are doing over there with the executives.
He's a great guy, but he's going to look back on that trade and go, I spent too much.
Yeah. Or move him before he plays.
Yeah.
He's probably dug in now. He's pot committed.
So, digging in a little deeper to these two, and we don't have to spend our whole show here, but these are important, right? And maybe, what was it about Caleb's play that made you question, just what was that thump in the glove of, oh, that's not Patrick Mahomes? What was that?
When it comes to quarterbacks, to me, one of the most important things I watch, translating them from college to try to see what they're going to be like in the pros, is watching them operate in the pocket, not leaving the pocket, not rolling out, not scrambling around in circles as Caleb Williams tends to do. And all that's fine. That's a whole separate category. I just want to see against real competition, not against Fresno State and San Jose State. I want to see it, or half the teams in the Pac-12 the year he won the Heisman. I want to see how these guys – I don't even look at that stuff. I don't even register their statistics from those games into my models because they're just a waste of time. I'm focusing on the decent and above opponents' defenses that they played, and then weighting those performances by how tough the defense was. So, but that's also the only tape I'll look at. So when I watch Caleb Williams against real defenses, I saw a quarterback that I've seen a whole bunch of times over the years that really gets flustered in the pocket. He has almost no pocket presence. He wants to, he's going to leave that pocket as quick as he can. When he tries to hang in the pocket, and when I say pocket, I mean it's a more of a known passing down, and the line has let the defensive line has surged, and they're closing in an actual pocket.
Yeah.
When he's the thing with Bryce Young, I'm gonna try not to hop around too much on this, but the thing that I saw on Bryce Young that was so obvious, a lot of these guys look fantastic when they have 7 seconds or unlimited time to throw, because they have an all-star offensive line with all-star weapons and an all-star running back, and nobody touches them, and they've got all day to throw. So Bryce Young can look fine in that scenario, but start to apply pressure, and then you see what these quarterbacks are made of when they're playing the teams that can get to them or get closer to them. So with Caleb, that's what I saw on tape was anytime the pocket was even getting remotely tight, he was either going to bail or he was going to try to make a hero throw. He was going to try to get rid of that ball. And what he was trying to get rid of the ball to, I don't think he was saying, I think he saw somebody with his jersey color on and like, I'm going to throw it in that direction. And
red.
And it might pay off.
I see red.
Yeah. So I have described Caleb Williams as a D grade pocket quarterback, but an A grade quarterback when he rolls out to his right or he scrambles out of the pocket, the play breaks down, the coverage breaks down. And when you get him on the run, especially to the right, he can see, he's got good vision. He's got a good arm. He's got good feet. He's lovely when he rolls out to his right. But I know through my history of watching this and quarterbacks like him specifically, it'll take about 5 weeks into this season because defensive coordinators are the most overpaid 7-figure people on the planet. Like they claim that they're, grinding tape 24 hours a day and they got a cot in their office. But like, how do I know that's how you should play Caleb Williams? But the first 3 to 5 opponents they play, they'll probably sit back afraid that he's going to run and he'll pick them apart. Like Caleb Williams may get off to a good start because of that. But eventually, in pretty short order, 3 to 5 games, they'll figure out, attack him from his right. Don't let him scramble. If he's going to scramble, make him go to his left. When he starts facing real defensive linemen and linebackers that have 4.4 and 4.5 speed, where he can't do old Fran Tarkington pirouettes around everybody and by himself 15 seconds to throw. When that doesn't work anymore, like just ask Justin Fields, it's all going to come crashing down for him because I just do not see an inkling of him being a good pocket quarterback. So the NFL is going to force him to be the thing that he does the worst.
Right.
And that's why I think it's going to break down. Now, in the best case scenario, he's just such a great scrambler. He's able to get to the outside often enough to be decent. I don't think he's ever going to be the elite quarterback and the next Mahomes, or I don't even see that as a possible outcome. I see C grade possible, but more likely D grade. That this is going to be bad. And then on the side of that, I don't think mentally he's ready for this. Right. I do think he is soft. I do think he doesn't want to be hit. In college, he can get away with that. He can scramble around bad Pac-12 defenses. He can scramble around FCS teams that he played. But I don't think he's going to be able to scramble his way around first-team NFL defenses. I don't think he has that level of foot speed. So I think a possible Johnny Manziel outcome is about to happen here with him.
Yeah, you talk about that in one of yours, how just big of a diva he is, right? The NIL stuff, and then how he was claiming that he was going to pull an Eli Manning and dictate where he was going to go. And the fact that like anybody, I mean, whether it's Warren and I talking or if we're in our chat and someone's like, what is wrong with this dude? To then not already actually have all those skills. And then you add the diva package, that does make sense. To switch gears, maybe a more positive take. Who are the rookies from this year that you are? I know you're super high on this rookie wide receiver class, and then Jaden Daniels you're pretty high on. Who are the guys that you're most excited about?
I'm going to name wide receivers first, but just thinking about the other rookies, but also thinking about the Caleb Williams thing. Just think about the Caleb Williams emotional hype that we're getting on him, in that people didn't think Bo Nix even deserved to be in the same conversation with Caleb Williams. a month ago. Now, people are not only saying, wow, Bo Nix is pretty good. There are people saying, wait a minute, Bo Nix looks like the best quarterback in this class. It took
don't let Nick hear that. We're going to edit that out.
We got a big Oregon fan on this.
It took 1 month for Caleb is the greatest on the holy one on top of the mountain that no one's even close to. 1 month later, 3 preseason games later,
right?
People are like, that Bo Nix is pretty damn good. I hear a lot of Bo Nix talk. I don't hear a lot of. I mean, there's still Caleb's got his love for sure.
Right.
But
the
now
one
you're seeing people say that Nix is the best. Well, that's a big old change to happen. Everybody in the world said it was Caleb Williams and no one was close, to now where Bo Nix might be better. It took 3 weeks for that to get undone.
Right.
So that's the type of hype I want to sell on a Caleb Williams, because to me it's emotional, it's hype, it's
right.
If everybody says it, if the 99.99% keeps saying it, if that's all you read, that's all you get when you look at Sports Center or highlights or what have you, is the announcers going bananas because of one particular play, and then you only get to see his 3 good plays on a loop. I mean, he looks like the greatest quarterback that's ever played the game if you just took his 3 best plays from this preseason. The problem is that all the other plays that they should be showing, he's had some serious I mean, he looks ridiculous on some of his plays in the preseason, but you're not going to see those on the ESPN highlights or YouTube clips. They're not going to show you that. So all people get to see is all the good stuff.
But maybe that's your next part of the metrics is you hire someone to just make the real clips that of people looking like dog shit. Like, no. We'll put this one out there.
I have thought of that.
So who are these wide receivers that you're looking forward to this year? Some maybe lower down guys.
And to the Marvin Harrison thing, I know he's not lower down, but as a scout, as looking at these things, I've said it a number of times this year. And I like to say it so that people don't think I'm totally insane. Like if I said, oh, Marvin Harrison stinks and Malik Nabers is overrated, and if I just went down the list and was just being anti-guy, then I would be a fool. I watched Marvin Harrison a ton, and I would look at it and I'd relook at it and I'd bounce it off some of the guys that I trust that also evaluate and go, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And like every time I watch Marvin Harrison, all the way through, every target from last year in college, I don't get it. I'm like, this is not the holy one on a mountain. Put on Malik Nabers in 3 plays. Everybody I trust, we all say the same thing. Like, holy crap, this is the guy. So to me, I'm like, why is Marvin Harrison on such a different planet than Malik Nabers? And Malik Nabers has his love, but it's not anything like Marvin Harrison. To me, Marvin Harrison isn't even close. He shouldn't even be mentioned in the same sentence as Malik Nabers, even if Marvin Harrison goes on to be really good. But down the chain on wide receivers, I do like Ladd McConkey a lot. When people talk about, oh, Marvin Harrison, he's an elite route runner, you're not watching all the tape of all the receivers from all of their work, because Ladd McConkey runs rings around Marvin Harrison for route running. So do about 15 other receivers in this draft. So Ladd McConkey is the Greek god of route running. You put him with Justin Herbert, which is the perfect mix. If you put Ladd McConkey with Bryce Young, if you would have gone to Carolina, it's like, we're not even having this conversation. But you put him with Justin Herbert, that when McConkey gets open in a blink and Justin Herbert can throw it to him accurately in a blink, it's a match made in heaven. It may be the best match made in heaven of all of the receivers. So that mean I so wanted Malik Neighbors to go to Arizona and for Marvin Harrison to fall to the Giants and Marvin to get Daniel Jones so that I know that I would be right.
Yeah.
So, but I love McConkey in general, but I love that his situation just adds rocket fuel to it. And then down the line, I mean, there's wide receiver talent that's going to go to waste. That guys that I think are super talented, if they would have fallen into the Chargers situation, like Roman Wilson, Malachi Corley, the undrafted free agent wide receiver from Holy Cross that went to Carolina that got sentenced to play for Carolina, Jalen Coker.
Yeah,
there's so many good wide receivers up and down the chain. Malik Washington for Miami is in a good spot, except for he's behind Tyreek and Waddle. So there's just so many talents at wide receiver, more than I even realized when I get to work more with the looking at the undrafted free agents. There's so much talent in the wide receiver class, but for fantasy, it's where did they fall, and are they going to ever get any targets?
Right. Yeah, and good targets.
Yeah, and good
targets. With a team moving the ball down the field and scoring points.
Right.
Yeah, and for that reason, you might as well just scratch Xavier Leggett right off your draft board.
He's so fun to listen to, though. I love his interviews. That's awesome. Who, Warren, you want to take the next one on maybe next year?
Well, I was not to dig back into negative things, but I think it is really valuable to have the curtains pulled back on people that we or the general mind think are awesome, but maybe RC's seeing something that they all don't. So who else in this class, rookie class, do you think is okay to fade?
Guys that that are ranked higher that I don't want any part of. Leggett in Carolina is for sure an obvious one. That guy, I don't know that he's that great to begin with, but man, he is in a terrible spot. I think I wouldn't want anything to do with Drake May from this quarterback class. He's not trading as hot as Caleb Williams is, but it's going to be weird if this draft works out to where the 1 and 3 taken quarterbacks end up being busts to whatever degree, and you guys like Penix down the line and McCarthy and obviously Jaden Daniels are all going to be better. It's just going to be another year where the first quarterback taken winds up not being the best quarterback from that draft class. That's happened a couple of years in a row now.
Right.
Other guys that people love that I'm not into, there's a bunch of them, but Bucky Irving, I don't think is the next coming. I think Ray Davis is very mediocre. I love Brian Thomas Jr., but I'm worried about him with Trevor.
Yeah, what about Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman?
Keon Coleman is perplexing to me. There's some times that he looks so good at his best. I'm like, wow, this guy should be a star. But he's a very awkward wide receiver. He's not so much a wide receiver as he is just like a player. And I don't know if that's going to win out. I don't know if he can just always out muscle and out athlete everybody else. The NFL has turned, in wide receiver terms, is turning more towards Amon-Ra St. Brown, not Chase Claypool. So Keon Coleman just looks great at times, but he also, when you watch play in and play out, he disappears. He looks awkward. I don't know that he can run his routes properly. You had mentioned Xavier Worthy, I don't think is a very good wide receiver. He reminds me more of Mecole Hardman, way more than he does the next Tyreek Hill. But he is, we do this game of Clue where it's like, oh, Professor Plum in the laboratory with the lead pipe, like, oh, Xavier Worthy, he's
Right.
super fast and he's with Patrick Mahomes. This has got to work out. Like
Right.
that
We've done that 3 years in a row.
We've done
now,
that
right?
with Marquise Valdez-Scantling and
It's just
Sky
not
Moore
happening.
and Kadarius Toney, and it's like Nicole Hardman. Like, this is really not work. I don't have to be a genius to track the track record and go, this doesn't seem to want to work. So, and now Rashee Rice and Marquise Brown got to be, and obviously with Kelsey, got to be ahead of him in the pecking order.
Right.
So I'm sure he'll have his bomb moments just like Nicole Hardman have, but I think Worthy will end up 2-3 years from now. We won't even really think a whole lot about him.
Have you come up a bit on Rashee Rice? You were.
Yeah.
How does that turn? How does that change for you? Yeah, because you said you don't have a problem ego-wise of being like, I'm out and now I'm in.
Yeah, I did not think watching him on tape at SMU. My takeaways were they try to use him as an outside wide receiver.
Right.
He didn't run great routes, so he wasn't getting open in a blink. But he was good. He had moments of being good, and then he had a lot of moments where he was butchering things. He didn't seem extremely fast. He didn't seem extremely great with his hands. He had drops problems in college. And then doing the background research, I also do a background check on these players to the best of my ability. Either I know somebody who knows them, or I'm watching interviews, reading everything that I can to do a background check, checking their Twitter, which used to be awesome years ago when they used to be kind of unchecked.
Right.
Now it's all manipulated. Now it's all just football stuff that they got wise to it. But when I did background check at Rashee Rice, I'm like, this guy's a problem. This guy is going to be a knucklehead problem for the NFL, and we see what he did this offseason. So, but they figured out a way to use him, not make him a regular wide receiver. They just do a good job of putting him kind of in the slot, hitting him with a quick pass, just getting the ball in his hands and letting him be an after the catch guy, kind of a poor man's Debo, who's also not a great wide receiver, but he's a great football player. So it's working. So I'm not gonna fight it, but I did not think that this was coming with Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I think you guys talked about that. I think you talked about it of later in the season, maybe because Kelsey was getting banged up, but when Rice started to run the Kelsey routes, and that's when he really started to have success. And Mahomes can get the ball on a guy, and he seemed to do an okay job of getting open, maybe not a Ladd McConkey level of separation, but get to the spot and the ball will be there.
And that's one of the most difficult things that I find as a scout is, especially early on when I was first starting, in your mind, you have all these biases. So it's like, I love Tom Brady as a quarterback, as a studier of football. I'm like, wow, Tom Brady. So when Lamar Jackson comes along, I'm like, get out of here with Lamar Jackson. Give me a break, because my mind says I'm looking for the next Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, right.
One of my first articles I ever put out that got picked up, and I got invited onto radio shows to talk about quarterback scouting and all of that, was my methodology, my system. That my headline title was "Searching for the Next Tom Brady." Like, I was trying to develop algorithms and Moneyball numbers and all that to try to find Tom Brady. Like, if I could develop that to find Tom Brady, would it then work going forward? Would it not only find Tom Brady, but would it also find all of the guys it should have found and Tom Brady? And then let's see if that works going forward. So I started with finding the next Tom Brady was really one of my earliest platforms. But that made me completely miss on Lamar Jackson because he didn't want Tom Brady. So I had to learn.
Right. I think you've said that a couple of times with the scouting. The idea I think what you said when we were talking just now was it'll be weird when the NFL has missed again on the first and third quarterback prospect. So I think like as a 2-part question. So what is your money ball? I know that with wide receivers, you say the money ball is, can a guy get open against good competition, right? You say that with all these great wide receivers, they can get open against excellent competition. What is the money ball for you for quarterbacks? Is it that pocket as the pocket closes? And can you define what weird means? Does it mean that all these guys lose their job? all these analysts?
You would think with the track record that they have that they would all be fired. Any of them that said that Bryce Young was better than CJ Stroud, including Ryan Poles, should be fired. David Tepper should lose his team.
Yeah, I'm fired.
Ryan Poles should be fired as the GM of the Bears because he traded away the pick that could have gotten him CJ Stroud.
Right.
And then the comedy of that is that they've won now that they've got Caleb Williams. I don't think it's going to work out that way. But they're never going to get fired. And part of it is, I think part of the fallacy of the 99 versus the 1 is if they all have the same opinion, when they're wrong, you're not going to lose your job to the one that was right because nobody has a different opinion. You're not allowed to have a different opinion on it. And I think they hide behind that because I think the TV analysts, the GMs, the coaches, they don't have time to watch all of this stuff. So they're watching highlights. They're hearing the noise of what other people are telling them. There's an art to it. And I don't think a lot of them, they don't have the time to develop that artistic side. So you either have to fire them all and you can't, or we just put up with this. So we somehow put up with this. We've come in the NFL to put up with all of these people saying these things and moving the markets. That's part of playing fantasy and dynasty too, is that I've got to stay in touch with who they're way off on or who they're way on to know who to sell high, who are the guys that I know now everybody's going to love because it's always being said on any type of media that's out there, and who do they hate. So if it's one of my guys, like a Rachaad White last year, like, oh, they hate this guy, they're driving his price down, now there's an opportunity. I hate it when I'm in sync with them, that if we both agree, then there's no opportunity for me because everybody else values them the way that I do. So I'm looking for the opportunities to sell high or buy early, buy low. So your question was before everybody getting fired, what was the...
It was, so the wide receiver Moneyball thing for you is getting open. What's the quarterback thing?
Well, with wide receivers, there's a number of things that go into it, but I'm now making sure that I look at their ability to get open, just raw look at it, because there are some guys that are incredible at getting open, but they play on offenses and they play with quarterbacks. They're in FCS level and they're in, lower schools, and they just don't have the same exposure that a lot of other players do. So, but with quarterbacks, I'm looking at how they do in the pocket, but I'm also looking at their performances, the literal statistics checked up against the competition that they played. How were their numbers when they played upper tier defenses? How was it against mediocre defenses? And I don't even really look at it when they're playing lower level defenses. So like if you go through Caleb Williams' last either 2 years or last year or in his Heisman year. I can't remember off the top of my head how I did it, but when I started looking at his statistical performances without even really digging into the tape and seeing the quirks to it all, just the raw numbers, you see his numbers against um, the bottom, like ranked 90 out of 120 D1 defenses. His numbers are incredible. Then when he moves to the middle of the pack defenses, they're still really good. Then when you see him, then when you look at the numbers when he's playing top 40 or top 30 defenses, which there were a couple in the Pac-12, and then he might have had out of conference, like with Notre Dame. Like he looked terrible against Notre Dame last year.
I was actually just looking up the stats because I remember that one. I remember watching that one and being like, "Oh my god, that was bad."
When I watched that game, I was like, I can't unwatch this. Like I may be, if that was an unfair representation, if he's really great and that was just the one bad game, I just happened to watch that first of him and I can't get it. I can't wash that taste out of my mouth. That was so bad. But when a quarterback can be that bad, I know that there's something. Great quarterbacks don't look that bad. So then you start looking for it and going when he's playing Washington and Utah and the better teams. Statistically, it just makes him average. I'm not saying he goes from great against bad defenses to terrible against good defenses. He just has normal to weak numbers against top defenses. He's human against top defenses or less than human against top defenses. So my whole argument with Caleb is that he's not a god. He's at best, he's human. So he is, by that standard, he is overpriced because he is not a god. His numbers say he's at best human.
So let's talk about the best quarterback in this year's class, who was actually drafted last year.
Yes. My favorite statement that not
That's a great one.
Gets at first.
Matt missed that one too.
I said that to him, I think, before the draft.
You said it, yeah.
But then I said it again in July, and he may have had a email or text come in that he glanced away and got lost on it. So
we got a sample size of Will Levis last year. But still high on him.
Oh yeah.
So what did you see there to keep him in that spot?
And the statement is Will Levis is the best quarterback prospect in the 2024 NFL draft. And I really mean that. If he were in it, and that we had the opportunity to, I went back and looked at there are a number of players in the offseason that are already in the NFL. That are curious to me. My memories of them during the season were high. My scouting might have been high. The numbers come in wobbly, but it still looked good. But I have the summer to just go through and literally go back through their entire NFL season, the season before, and watch every snap. And I did that with Anthony Richardson. I did that with Will Levis. So when I went back, I already had good rankings. When we started the process of 2023, and I scout and rescout, and then we get the combine, and then we get more information, and then I get more time to look at more tape. Then I'm scouting defensive players that are playing against those guys, so I get to see the quarterbacks from another perspective, even though I'm not totally focused on them. I get another flavor by looking at them from the defensive side. But Will Levis was right up at the top of our grades at one point. It was like a horse race between three quarterbacks that were constantly trying to get in front of each other, Levis and Richardson and CJ Stroud from last year. So I already had good scouting vibes on Levis. Then when I saw him play last year in the NFL, I loved what I saw. I also knew that the Tennessee Titans had the worst offensive line in the history of mankind. Part of that their own fault, but their on purpose offensive line was terrible. Then they all got hurt, and they were literally picking guys up on Monday, and they were having to start on Sunday, blocking for the offense and blocking for Derrick Henry and for Levis. So a lot of Levis's numbers that don't translate well when people look at it and go, oh, less than 60%. Oh, he's so erratic. Oh, a lot of that was because he was under constant pressure. But the beautiful thing about Will Levis, which is a complete 180 of what I see with Caleb Williams, Will Levis doesn't flinch when he's in the pocket and when he's getting pressured. And he got pressured a lot last year with the Tennessee offensive line, which made him have to force some throws. Also, by virtue of if you're Will Levis and you're under constant assault in the passing game when you drop back to pass, and you have three choices of who to throw to, you're like, there goes DeAndre Hopkins, there goes Nick Westbrook-Akini, and there goes Chris Moore. Who are you going to throw to? So a lot of the time he would just be like, screw it. I'm throwing to DeAndre Hopkins. He's over there somewhere. I'm going to see if I can land this plane. So you saw him do that like in this opening in his opening game. What defenses tend to do with quarterbacks that they're not familiar with is they'll sit back and make them try to throw into coverage. They won't all out assault them right away. So that's why Levis comes out against the Falcons, who can't rush the passer anyway, even if they tried. So Levis comes out and has a 4 touchdown. I mean, Levis looked like a superstar right off the bat.
Yeah,
that's the Will Levis I know is there. So then teams started to attack him, and he's got horrible wide receivers to throw to, so things didn't look so hot. But there were moments within that, like his comeback against Miami. I mean, Will Levis had some incredible moments on tape. And for me, his bad moments were all mostly caused by the offensive line struggles, the bad wide receivers, and quite frankly, the bad coaching and the bad offensive plan on top of everything. So now he's got the complete opposite of that. He's in the perfect situation. I wouldn't be running around being so boastful about Will Levis if Mike Vrabel was still there.
Yeah, sure.
Part of the secret sauce now is he's got an incredibly offensive-minded head coach, and that's going to be a top offense, and he's just the right guy for it. I think Will Levis is like if you took Baker Mayfield's attitude and put it in Justin Herbert's body and arm, that's Will Levis.
I love that.
It's pretty cool too, going full circle on this conversation, how much you've been pooping on Caleb, and that's who he plays the first week.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
On that one, I have plus 4.5.
Oh, nice. Titans 4.5.
That's going to be a wake-up call, potentially. I mean, anything.
Yeah, of course.
In any one given week, crazy things happen, and all the pass interference calls that extend drives. I mean, who knows who's going to ever win any game against the spread? So I don't bet those heavily, but that was one of the first games I bet. That's like, oh, the public, Vegas, or the people who are supposed to know, they hate Will Levis. They love Caleb Williams. So I've also bet the
I was gonna say all the props.
Over win total on Tennessee is 6.5 with plus odds. I've been scooping that up, but betting against Chicago, which is plus odds on the under on 8.5 because they're so sure. But that's a repeat of last year. We made a little small killing betting against Bryce Young, betting against his touchdown count, betting against Carolina's win total. A year ago, Bryce Young was going to lead Carolina to the division title.
Yeah.
Now look how that turned out.
I love you also said earlier your relationship's transactional. I am so rooting for Bryce Young from like the bottom of my heart, and I hear what you're saying, and I hope you're wrong, simply because I don't want that guy to be known as, the next Ryan Leaf. Like, that just would be a bummer.
Well, I hate to break it to you. I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
Well, RC, I want to be respectful of your time. You've already donated over an hour of that to us. We would go all night, but I do want to let you get some sleep because I'm sure you got plenty of things left to do this week.
I got to get back to work, but give me one more.
Okay.
Let's go one more round.
All right.
Give me your best one.
Oh, I think we both have.
Or your most curious one.
Why you talking about specific player?
Yeah, whatever you
All right, mine will be the best wide receiver in last year's rookie class.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Wilson. Will he show up this year with a healthy Kyler Murray?
That's a perplexing question because I think Michael Wilson is better than Marvin Harrison. But he's not going to get there's no way he's going to get, in theory, there's no way he's going to get the targets to prove that.
Right.
So I'm already going to be at a deficit for saying that. There is a potential win in that. I gotta believe that when Arizona goes out there week 1, 2, 3, 4, the top cornerback is going on Marvin Harrison.
Yep.
So however good he's going to be or not going to be, he's already going to get the top coverage.
Right.
Which is going to mean that Michael Wilson is going to get lesser coverage. So that's a potential advantage if Kyler Murray decides he's not going to force it to a not open Marvin Harrison. And he's going to otherwise use his two better wide receivers, Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson, and have a field day with them and get Trey McBride involved and let Harrison almost be a decoy of sorts. And don't try to force it to him. But like, if you watch Marvin Harrison's tape, if you watch the best plays, it's all him tightly covered and having to jump over and contort over somebody and make a catch or do a comeback. Or the thing that I hate about wide receivers, I respect it and I hate it at the same time, is receivers who are on the outside, they sprint 10 yards, corner's going with them, but then they stop and turn around because they know this is the stopping point because the ball's already coming behind me. Right. To me, that's cheating.
Yeah.
So if Marvin Harrison gets a lot of those, I am going to be so pissed off when I see that happening. When I see him have 7 catches in a game like that.
Yeah.
He's a top PPR wide receiver. And it's going to piss me off when that happens. But they'll catch on to that too. But that's what when I think of Marvin Harrison, that's what I've seen Marvin Harrison constantly covered and constantly having to make a big time catch. But he only does that occasionally. A lot of his tape, if you watched everything that he did last year, you'd see him trying to make those catches and not making them. But there are a couple times where he does make them. I could show you tape. I could show you 25 different wide receivers who have their best 3 catches are better than Marvin Harrison's best 3 catches. But we see Marvin Harrison's best 3 catches all the time, and we don't see it on the other guys. So potentially Michael Wilson can benefit from that because he will be the open guy with the lesser coverage is my hope. But last year's wide receiver class, you want to talk about a comparison to this year's wide receiver class, like Michael Wilson, I reluctantly thought, and I say reluctantly because I didn't think he was great. I just thought he was better than everybody else. Ignoring the injuries, I realized there's an injury issue there, but just straight up wide receiver talent, I thought he was the best package of size, speed, and a great ability to get open. If he were dropped into this year's, like, hey, Will Levis is the best quarterback prospect of 2024, Michael Wilson, I don't even know if he'd be in the top 10 of this class this year. I mean, so last year was not a great class. my 1, 2, 3, I think, was Michael Wilson 1, A.T. Perry 2, who I just was watching the Saints-Titans game, preseason game, as I watched all the preseason games back, and I focus on Perry because I'm so into him, and I'm watching him work, and I'm like, this guy is great. Like, what has Dennis Allen got against him? So I think A.T. Perry was the second best, arguably maybe the most gifted of all of the wide receivers from last year's class. The other guy that I thought that was the most gifted, but in a different way, was Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
And I like him fine, but I don't love that situation for fantasy. But as a talent, he's a different type of talent than Wilson or Perry. He was the best at what he does as a smaller receiver, could do the bubble screen thing, and that's not A.T. Perry and Michael Wilson's game. They're more pure wide receivers. I think A.T. Perry's got a lot of Justin Jefferson in him. That's not Zay Flowers' game, but for what Zay Flowers does, you could argue that he was the best of that group. And I think you might have mentioned JSN. That I don't know that was me that would have said he's in the top group. I am not a JSN guy. He might have been one of the 5 or 6 best, but in our rankings, I don't even know if he was in our top 10 actually last year. But that was a weak year, and he might have been in the top 10, but I wasn't a JSN guy.
You're certainly not on him this year.
Matt was trying to talk me into him
last year. I think that's what pulled him into the collective top 4. Was you were Zay and he was JSN, and it was kind of
let's pull all 4 of these together. Okay, he can be the number 4 of the top 3 group, but I'm not a JSN guy, for the record, and that's been the right call. And now look at, I mean, neither him nor Addison impressed me that much. And now look, we're a year later, and nobody even hardly cares about those 2 guys. It's funny how that. I mean, there's last year's like JSN. I mean, that should be the top wide receiver. Like, that's the Ohio State lineage. He's going to be the top guy. How can you be against JSN? Here we are a year later. Nobody even cares. People have to stop and think.
But his 3-cone drill was so good.
Yeah. Well, and Garrett Wilson said he's the best one in the room, right? It was Garrett Wilson, Olave, and JSN, and Garrett Wilson's like, he's the best one here. And you're like, well, if he says it. Yeah.
And he's not terrible. I don't think he's terrible. He was more, I think he's soft. I don't think he's into football. I can see it when he's playing and running his routes. He's just that. There's a mistake that players make, coaches definitely make, scouts definitely make. They love to watch these guys, especially quarterbacks, in 7-on-7 and 11-on-11. I'll bet Caleb Williams is the greatest 11-on-11 and 7-on-7 quarterback that's out there. And I'll bet JSN is just like a Pro Bowl 7-on-7 wide receiver. But when somebody knocks your head in when you're trying to make a catch, and if you do make the catch, they're going to try to take your head off your shoulders after you make the catch. That starts to change how good these wide receivers are that are used to 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 no contact drills. So I think JSN is an 11-on-11 star. He's not a Sunday's football star.
Love that.
Chatham, do you have one last one?
You have time for one more? So actually it happens with this is more like a contextual thing, right? So you saw that Ayuk signed today. And a buddy of mine sent me a text or, an X that says, shows all of the wide receivers this offseason. Ayuk, Lamb, Jefferson, DJ Moore, Amon-Ra, AJ Brown, Waddle, Collins, Smith, Pittman, Ridley, Judy. Do you think this is a bad call? Get the NFL giving all these guys so much money, given what you said about this year's wide receiver class? And I know that you've spoken really highly about next year and even the kids coming out of high school. I mean, if you read anything about, I don't even know the kid's name, but the new Ohio State wide receiver.
Yeah, he's good. He's really good.
And just the stuff that his like elite D-backs are saying about him, they're like, this guy is ridiculous. So Do you think all this money that the NFL is using on the wide receiver is dumb, or you think it makes sense because they're trying to win now?
Yes and no. Possibly yes to both of those sides. I think it's dumb big picture because there's so much wide receiver talent out there that, like, if I was an NFL GM, I would be trying to get A.T. Perry right now for a 7th round draft pick. I would have, my wide receiver room would be loaded, and I would just keep reloading it. So I wouldn't be inclined to pay a good, and I'm using that almost in a bad sense. I'm not paying a good wide receiver, great wide receiver money. So Brandon Ayuk would have been off to Pittsburgh or wherever I could have sent them to, wanting that kind of money. I just don't think he was worth it. So it's short-sighted from that perspective. It's short-sighted from what I think all the other wide receivers that could have been drafted not in the first round, could be swiped off of other teams. But the reality of the San Francisco 49ers is this is probably their last window before they have to dismantle everything and rebuild it.
Right.
So if they didn't have Ayuk, and with Ricky Pearsall shoulder probably gonna, I don't know that Ricky Pearsall will play a game this year. They couldn't get back Terry McLaurin. They wanted Pickens, they wanted McLaurin, they wanted Amari Cooper. They didn't get any of those in a deal. So they couldn't afford to just let Ayuk go and be in a position to win the championship, which with Kittle's age, Debo's contract is going to have him gone next year. Purdy's going to command top dollar. This is the last year for the 49ers current dynasty. Then they're going to have to retool it and break it down and make it different. So Ayuk just got into a perfect situation where San Francisco ultimately had to pay him because it's all about this year, which I totally get. They've got a window right now, and it's going to be totally different next year. They're going to be looking to change up the team, and McCaffrey's only got so much more time at the top, the whole bit. And when they pay Purdy the money that he's going to command, I don't know how they're going to pay Bosa, Ayuk, Purdy, McCaffrey. Somebody's going to have to go. And it may be Ayuk is the one who goes next year.
Right.
That's like Pittsburgh was willing to pay that money. Cleveland was willing to pay him that money. So why wouldn't they just pick up that contract next year?
Yeah. It's a very Moneyball response. It actually made me think of the book when they're like, Tejada's fine. He can go. He's gone. And you're like, hey, just MVP. Like, what are you talking about? He's fine.
We're going to build them in the aggregate. I will build Brandon Ayuk with 3 wide receivers off the waiver wire.
Exactly.
All right, RC. This was awesome. The number one show that we look forward to every year is you coming on the Mind of Mansion, and to have you join us here on our show is a dream come true for us amateurs in this world. So before we sign off here, why don't you plug what you do one last time, drop your handles, tell the people where they can go to find your stuff.
And first off, I very much appreciated the invite. Had a great time talking. Wish we could go on for another hour 20 as I'm looking at the recording clock. So if you look forward to my appearance on the Podfather, if that's your favorite appearance of the year, we can make it an annual thing to be on this podcast, and that can be your new favorite podcast of the year. So
love it.
Keep me in mind if you guys are podcasting. Keep me in mind. So very much appreciate jumping on. Appreciate you guys' support of the work that we're doing and all the kind words. Very much appreciate it. FantasyFootballMetrics.com is our website. FF Metrics is the handle on Twitter and YouTube and anywhere else people find stuff. We're wrapping up the preseason, so there's a good amount of open material on fantasy football metrics, but the Willy Wonka gates are about to close for subscribers only as we go into win money mode for subscribers. And the fantasy football season is a grind. It is not draft a team and therefore you're going to win. It is every day tilling the soil through the season and finding hidden gems, things that are emerging before everybody else does, waiver guys 2 steps ahead of everyone else. That's what we're notorious for. So that's what we will be doing. I will be imprisoned in my office with a lack of sleep and just bread and water for the next 5 months at least.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, this was great. I sat here with sweaty hands, making sure I didn't say something that sounded insanely stupid. This is awesome, man. Really appreciate it.
No, you didn't say anything insanely stupid. You said multiple things that were insanely stupid. Just one. No.
Good. Did my job.
Thanks again, RC.
Great questions and pertinent and well-shaped and happy to take the arrows. And I had sweaty palms to make sure I couldn't not defend my position or sound like a fool. So I hope I did not.
No, it was great.
Yeah.
We loved it. Thanks again. Have a great night, everybody.
All right. Good luck to you guys this season.
All right.
Good
Thanks,
luck.
Rusty.